Convention on Biodiversity imposes moratorium on geoengineering. Oh, look, they even have a picture of how the chemtrails work. Well, this sounds like wonderful news, doesn't it? The 10th Convention on Biodiversity, hosted by Japan this year, wrapped up Friday with a new and improved agreement intended to protect global biodiversity. And basically what they did is they have established a moratorium on geoengineering. Sounds wonderful. Yes, chemtrail pictures there. They did discuss aerosol, engineering, stratospheric engineering, particles, all that. According to the Latin American director Sylvia Ribeiro, the moratorium means any private or public experimentation or adventurism intended to manipulate the planetary thermostat will be in violation of this carefully crafted UN consensus. And altering the Earth in order to stop climate change includes blasting surface particles into the upper atmosphere to reflect the sun's rays, dumping iron particles in the oceans to nurture CO2 absorbing plankton, firing silver iodide into the clouds to produce rain, genetically engineering crops to have reflective leaves, spraying seawater into clouds to make clouds whiter, dumping large quantities of plant matter into the ocean, or turning it into charcoal for burying in soils. The catch is, well, who are the signatory countries? If you want to see who the signatory countries are, you can actually go to Wikipedia. They list 193 here, but I hear they're actually 195 at this time. Problem is, for one, it doesn't include the US. And the US, when it comes to New World Order, and unfortunately the destruction of our environment, is among those leading the charge. I mean, you just have to look at the global war on terror. In the aftermath of 9/11, the President Bush clearly said, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. They have obviously a lot of influence. And on the US's impetus, we're now engaged in this global war on terror. War based on lies. And this has gone on for years and years. So you just see how much influence the US has. The US is not signatory to this. Like, here's some examples, okay? Mali, Malaysia, Brazil, Argentina. You think they're the ones doing the chemtrailing? I don't think so. So likely, most of what the chemtrail operation is being done by Americans. The American government, here's their response to this. Engineering the climate research needs and strategies for international coordination. Report by Chairman BART Gordon, Committee on Science and Technology, U.S. House of Representatives. Well, this was done in response to this moratorium. And it doesn't sound at all like the U.S. wants to stop geoengineering. Actually, from this report, it looks like they'd like to make efforts to coordinate it better and to make the funding allocations and things clear more specifically for geoengineering. Because what is stated in this report is that there's no specific geoengineering program or funding for geoengineering per se. They just don't use that word. But if you look at the report, you can see that it involves a lot of geoengineering related research and activities. Says, as stated, climate engineering research will be multidisciplinary and require a coordinated effort to sufficiently inform testing or deployment of any of the proposed strategies, and etc. And then here's a whole list of things they, would like to do: radiation measurement, cloud microphysics, etc., etc. So this doesn't look here like, they're trying to find a way to put an end to geoengineering research. Page 24 specifically mentions Aerosol Research. They're talking about which types of atmospheric particles will act as cloud condensation nuclei. The reason they're doing this is, because they use these specific particles to then create clouds. Page 38 in the PDF. The U.S. Department of State is best equipped federal body to facilitate an international forum for guiding research and regulation and pursuing intergovernmental consensus as the discipline develops. Goes on to say down here, those strategies that would result in transboundary impacts such as changes in monsoon patterns and sunlight availability would necessitate international coordination and governance at an early stage. If the United States were to formalize research activities on climate engineering, because remember, they're doing it, it's just not formal, complementary international discussions on regulatory frameworks would be required. So it looks to me like the US is trying to think of a way to get the rest of the world on board with the geoengineering program, not to stop it. Lower down on page 40, it appears that a comprehensive interagency research agenda on climate engineering would call for participation from the same agencies in the US GCRP and would likely be managed under a similar structure. So they're just trying to figure out how to coordinate it better and manage it better. Here's an article from the 24th of May. UN body urges caution on synthetic bacteria geoengineering. It's basically the same thing about wanting to have a moratorium on geoengineering, but this goes back to May. And another thing they addressed here was synthetic bacteria, namely the product created by Craig Venter with this company Synthetic Genomics, which they named Synthia. And they mentioned their concerns about how this should not be released into the environment. And Sylvia Ribeiro, who I mentioned before, says, we have a de facto moratorium. Okay, but remember, the US is not signatory to any of this. Well, if you go to this article, The Gulf Blue Plague, It's Not Wise to Fool Mother Nature, the author, Michael Edward, makes a very good case for this artificial bacteria having already been released in the environment in the Gulf of Mexico following the oil spill. And it's been used to eat up oil, however it's very toxic and it's making people sick. So much for a moratorium. And like I said, if US doesn't sign, well, they just do whatever they want. And while we're on the subject of Synthia, which is the name of the bacteria, and what's going on in the Gulf. All right, you see this? This is for 2010 hurricanes. As you notice, none of them are hitting the Gulf Coast, Florida and all that. Well, earlier this year, I think it was in April or May, our local papers here, and probably others as well, of course, were saying that this was going to be the worst hurricane season since, I think, 2005. 17 hurricanes were expected. A lot of them should be large. Well, where are all those hurricanes? It's not normal, actually, not to have any hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, but this year, there really weren't any. Again, have a look at the map. Now, how is this possible? Where are all the hurricanes? Well, in this article, he makes the case for the hurricanes having been diverted via, I guess you would call that geoengineering, wouldn't you? Diverting hurricanes. And the reason for this being to prevent the spreading of this bacteria which had been introduced in the Gulf. The loop currents also stalled, so maybe there are other possibilities. I don't know, I'm no scientist. Maybe the hurricanes didn't come in because of the change in the loop current, but who knows? In any case, it's very likely that this bacteria was released, and it's also very possible that they've been averting hurricanes. So let's go back to this document from the Congress, and what it says here about synthetic bacteria is, it is the opinion of the chair that other topics such as synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and strategic raw materials may be of international significance and mutual interest to the US and UK committees, and that these topics may be appropriate for bilateral or multilateral collaboration in the future. It doesn't look like the US is interested in stopping geoengineering activities or research, and actually looks to me like they're working on formalizing it and creating collaboration with other countries and coordination, as they said in the document, large-scale involvement, and including also synthetic biology. So you can have these moratoriums, but the US is really the leader in all this stuff, and if they don't want to go along with it, well, what does it really accomplish? So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, but let's not get too excited just yet. I'd like to tell you that I am moving my radio show, which is on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. I'm moving it from Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to Tuesday and Thursday, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And maybe a lot of you don't know that I have a radio show, but I do, including also a chat room where you can kind of, communicate with me and Karen. Karen's my co-host, while we're on the air. And some of the guests that we're going to be having next week, which will still be 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it'll be 2 to 4 as of the 8th of November. Monday, I'll be having Natural Netta, who's going to be talking about metabolic typing. Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be having Charlie Veach of the Love Police. Friday, I'll be having Charles Wells, who wrote a document called The Motorist Remedy about the whole driver's license scam and why you should be able to drive without a license. And Monday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll have Robert Carabine to talk to us about the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, and this is his website. So all right, well, thanks for listening to me, and I hope to have you join me and Karen on the radio and see you in the chat room.